process. Yeah, so just be continuing with what we learned on Tuesday. Yes, and Rajay is a strategic designer at ThinkPlace, and he's also the organizer at UX Kitchen. I'm sure most of us are conversant with UX Kitchen. It's a community of UX and UI designers. Yeah, so welcome, Rajay.
Thanks, Luke. And it's nice to meet you all. Really interesting to hear some of the backgrounds that you all have and your transitions into UX. I feel like UX is a field that people are coming from all sorts of backgrounds. So you know, no matter what you've done before, there's always a unique angle that you can bring to UX. So yeah, just keep going, and it's nice to know that you've all been learning so much from the boot camp so far, and I hope that you can learn something valuable from this session as well. So as Luke mentioned, my name is Rajesha, and I'm a strategic designer at ThinkPlace. ThinkPlace is a global innovation and design consultancy. So we work mainly in the international development field, conducting human-centered design. So we go into the field and do research, and then go through the design thinking process where we design um, concepts and prototype solutions for NGOs predominantly in the public health, education, and technology fields. And as Luke mentioned, I'm also a organizer at UX Kitchen. For those of you who don't know it, UX Kitchen is a community for UX enthusiasts, and we organize meetups. We had our first meetup at the beginning of this year, our first in-person meetup, and we're planning to hold more. So I'll make sure to send over the links to our pages. Feel free to join. We also have a Medium page and a YouTube channel where we post videos on UX and going through the process in our efforts to make UX design more UX education more accessible to people, which is exactly what Luke and Mandela and your colleagues are doing. So I think it's a really great thing. Um, I'll share. Prepared a presentation on Mural, which is one of my one of my favorite platforms. It's a collaborative whiteboard platform, so I do almost everything on that. Um, just looking for the share button. I hope you can all see my screen. Um, up if you can.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I probably should have shared this when I was giving my introduction, but I've done that. So uh, I'll go through. My agenda is pretty simple. I'm basically following on from what Kelvin presented in the Getting Started with UX. So I'll be talking through the competitor analysis, and then we'll do an interactive brainstorming session together, because I think the best way to learn is by actually doing it and going through it together. So if any of you have any questions as I'm speaking, please feel free to raise your hand or just unmute your mic and ask a question as I'm talking if something is not clear. I might not have my eyes on the Microsoft Teams um, window, so feel free to unmute if I've not been clear about something. So I believe that you finished off with, defining problem statements with Kelvin. And what I'm going to take you through now is a competitor analysis. And again, I want to try and make the session as interactive as possible. So, I'd love for discussion to come through, and, just ask any questions. But also, I'd love to hear your thoughts about a few things. So, when you hear the term competitor analysis, what comes to mind? What are the that come to mind? How do you understand what a competitor analysis is? does anyone have any thoughts on that? Feel free to unmute and answer, or you can raise your hand.
A competitor analysis can be described as a study of other companies or people involved in the same field that you're working on.
Nice, yeah. Study of other companies, companies in the same field, so understanding your industry a bit better. Anyone else have any answers? Anyone have anything else to add to what Lovett said? All right. Yeah, but that was a good answer. Yeah, it's a study of other companies. Looking at their products, other companies in the same field. It could be their products or their services. Looking at what's working well for them, what's not working well. Looking at what with the need that you're trying to address, what users are interested in, and essentially, um, yeah, it's doing a study of them. So an analysis, it can be a very high level analysis where you're using your own experience and judgment to review something, but you can also do it in a more systematic way, where you're actually creating criteria. You could be creating usability criteria to understand how accessible different products are, or you can be creating your own sort of scorecard, and we'll go through that later. But now I want to ask the question of why is a competitor analysis important, or why would you want to do a competitor analysis?
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Collins. So I'm going to give it a try. So I guess competitor analysis is important when maybe you want to understand exactly how some other company might have gone through the process. It will give you maybe a detailed information of whether the field you're going into or the units that you want to work with, if they're actually working for them, and also give you a clear understanding of maybe the people you're going to be covering and how it's going to affect them, or if there's an issue somewhere, you can always see if the competitor was able to solve such issues and be able to sort also for yourself. So yeah.
Mhm. Nice, nice. Yeah, that's a great answer. So yeah, if you're facing a certain issue, it's always a good idea to see if someone else may have already solved that issue, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. If that issue has been solved elsewhere, then it's time saving to just use the same method if that works. Anyone else have any other ideas, to any other thoughts or answers?
This is Johari. Just to add on what Collins has said,
Mm-hmm.
I think competitor analysis can help us to identify the strength, weaknesses of the other businesses, and it can also help us to assess the standards of the industry at the moment, because you don't want to be left behind. Thank you.
Nice, nice. Yeah, like two very good points. So you're understanding the strengths and weaknesses, what's working well, what's not working well for other products and services, and also understanding, like, yeah, what is the current bar that is set in the industry. So if you are going to create a product in that space and you're competing with all these products, what are the standards that you need to reach? Nice. Um, so I'll move ahead and I'll go through the, these points. So again, I think you both got some really good points in here. So yeah, it gives you more of an insight into the industry on the problem at hand. What's going on, what are companies creating, and what sort of standards are there currently. You also learn by breaking down why some designs are working well versus not so well. So the strengths and weaknesses that you mentioned. Yeah, also understanding how your users, how our users and other customers feel about them. Again, getting this information, maybe you could talk to people who have used some of these products before, or you might find, some reviews online. And then also, yeah, understanding where your product might stand in reference to its competition. Again, with identifying strengths and weaknesses, seeing where it matches up with the standards, and finally getting inspiration. It's also a great way to just get ideas for your own product. Again, doing a competitor analysis is not the only thing that you need to do to design a good solution, and so we'll talk about some of those limitations later. But now, I'd like to know, when do you think a competitor analysis should happen in the design process, from your current understanding of the design process? Yep. I've seen. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Yes.
Someone else is going. Okay. Oh, so I think it would depend on where you are in the field already. So let's say if you're trying to solve a problem, it means that maybe you already started and you're midway and you're encountering a problem. So you want to see how that same problem has been solved by others. The second one is also, when you're starting out, you can always use maybe the user experience and customer feel from others, so that you know how they're relating to such a product. So when you're starting out, you are able to understand whether or not it's good for them or if it's not. Yeah. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so you can totally use it at a range of stages in the design process, whether you're midway through a problem and you need to get a better understanding of what else is happening out there, or yeah, when you're just starting out, or when you want to find out how users are encountering or experiencing another product. I've seen a hand raised from Paminas.
Hello, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
I think I'd go for computer analysis after defining the problem. So you've learned you've understood how a problem is, and then you want to see how your competitors have solved it. And then you want to learn if you can solve it in a better way, maybe save more time or more resources.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and exactly, it's once you've defined the problem, once you've identified that need that you're trying to address, that's when it's good to do a competitor analysis, because now you know which types of products or which industry to look at. Because if you try to do it earlier and you haven't fully defined the product, you might look at products in all sorts of different fields, and you might just end up getting confused. So that's great. And I'm sorry, I hope I pronounce your name, but I see a hand raised from Ephraim.
Hi, hope I can be heard.
Yes.
Thank you. I think during research and also during production, so that you can know the standard that is being set out there. And then I also think that it's a continuous process. Even after the product launch, you can still continue doing the research, the analysis, to know how the market is doing, if there are any changes and what you need to adjust. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. So, usually, like, more formally, it's like in the research phase, but it's, again, with the design thinking process, it's continuous. You're always iterating, and so it's this continuous process where you're constantly still looking out for what's out there. I know that there are two more hands raised, but just for the sake of time, I'll just go through these questions, and perhaps you can maybe answer the next question. So I'll keep you in mind. So for when, again, yeah, more formally, it's usually undertaken in the early stages of a design process, but many of you mentioned, it's still a continuous process where when you go into production, or when you've launched a product and you're trying to understand how it's being taken. And usually, when it's done more formally is when you're in a much larger company where, there might be enough funding to do these types of studies. It might be a task that you're given as a UX researcher to write a report as a competitor analysis. But more often than not, these analyses are often informal activities that UX designers take for your own benefit. So, for these reasons that we mentioned before, understanding what's happening in the industry, getting inspiration for more ideas. And so when this is done more informally, it's really up to you as the designer or the researcher to decide how much time you want to invest in doing a competitor analysis. It does take time, but depending on the method or the approach you take, and we'll go through some of these different potential approaches. Again, there's no right or wrong. There's no right way of doing a competitor analysis. You really just have to see how to do it with the time and the budget that you have. So I want to talk about the mindsets, when you're doing a competitor analysis. Number one is, identify the need. So if you're looking at a particular feature for a product, you really need to have a good understanding of why that feature is being used. So let's talk about the search feature in, maybe Spotify or Amazon. If you were designing another platform, or if you had an e-commerce website and it was only selling maybe like 10 products, do you think the search feature would still be important? Probably not, right? So if you're not fully understanding the need, like the search feature, it allows you to browse or to look for a specific product out of a range of many, many products potentially on an e-commerce site. And the next one is to identify the competitors. So for each product, you usually have two types of competitors, either a direct competitor or an indirect competitor. Can anyone take a shot at, highlighting what the difference between a direct competitor and an indirect competitor might be? Maybe this is a harder question. Or let's say we were looking at McDonald's. Who might be a direct competitor for McDonald's? Feel free to also type in the chat if you have an answer.
KFC would be direct competitor.
Yep, that was Whitney, right? Yeah. Yeah. Ali said Burger King. Yep, definitely. Another Burger King. Yep.
Starbucks.
Sorry.
Starbucks.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Do you mind typing in the chat?
I think I can give it a try.
Yeah.
The direct competitor are the people who offer the same product within the same locality that you are in, and they just tweak difference that
Mhm.
outstands each other.
Mhm.
Whereas the indirect are people who offer almost the same product, but there is that locality difference. The distance they are between one and the other is quite apart.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, definitely a direct competitor is, they offer the same product. It can be in the same locality. And yeah, perhaps an indirect competitor could be, like McDonald's would probably not be competing with, because it's not located in Nairobi. It probably wouldn't be competing with KFC over here. But in the US, McDonald's and KFC are both there, so they would be direct competitors. But I'm also looking for another way that a company can be an indirect competitor. Does anyone have any thoughts?
Can I give it a go?
Yep.
McDonald's and Uber Eats, can Uber Eats be an indirect competitor?
Mhm. I'm I think that's a good question. I'm not quite sure because McDonald's, um, the products that McDonald's have are, the burgers and the fries and the shake, it's the food. So the need that they're satisfying is, someone who is hungry and needs to eat food. Whereas Uber Eats has a slightly different need that it's satisfying. It's providing the ability for someone to look for different options for food and then select a restaurant that they want to order and having the convenience of it being delivered from it. So it's still in the same space. I think that's a good question, but I'm not quite sure that they are di- indirect competitors. I'm seeing a hand from Whitney.
I'm just giving this a try.
Mhm.
Could we say Galitos, in that they offer, they have ice cream, they have fries, they have chicken, variety other than McDonald's. So
Mhm.
um, they're indirectly competing with McDonald's in that we're giving a variety rather than the burgers and the fries.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, 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 totally. So, they provide similar products that they're not the same. So they're still satisfying the same need, or they're appealing to customers who, have the same, problem, or customers who are seeking the same thing, but they're providing different products, whereas a direct competitor is providing the same product. I've also seen Ali's comments. Yeah, an indirect competitor provides an alternative, not the same particular product. Like one may do burgers and another does pizza. Exactly. And lastly, love it. Seeing your hand up.
Let me give this a shot. An indirect competitor be described as, for instance, we have KFC who offer a variety, let's say, um, fries, chicken, milkshakes, and all that. Then we have some random restaurant in town in CBD offering, let's say, the minimum they're serving is fries and chicken and maybe soda. So I can describe it as an alternative to other what the other company is giving, but now slightly less compared to the competitors.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, 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 totally. So again, still like providing slightly alternative offerings. Yeah, nice. So just for the definitions, direct competition are products and services that are essentially the same. Indirect competition, products or services that are not the same, but could satisfy the same consumer needs. So again, like was mentioned, a pizza like Pizza Hut could be an indirect competitor of McDonald's, but Burger King would be a direct competitor of McDonald's. How about Netflix? Can any of you think of either direct or indirect competitors for Netflix?
Hulu can be a direct competitor for Netflix.
Mhm. Yeah, nice.
Though I'm not sure about the indirect competitor in this
Mhm,
case.
mhm. It's it's a little tricky, right? Yeah.
Can I say YouTube is an indirect competitor of Netflix?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
entertainment.
Yeah, it's still entertainment, so it's satisfying the need for entertainment, but they're not exactly producing series and movies on YouTube, but it's more like vlogs and mini documentaries. So yeah, I would say I've seen a lot more direct competitors coming up on the chat. HBO, Disney Plus, Prime TV, nice. Showmax. Yeah, do any of you think that maybe Apple Podcasts could be a indirect competitor of Netflix, or um, maybe Audible?
I think
Podcast.
it can be an indirect because one is visual and one is more of audio,
Mhm,
and but at the end they serve the same purpose of giving information and entertainment.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. I've seen someone post sleep direct or indirect competitor. I mean, but yeah, I love that answer. I think I would definitely take sleep over Netflix sometimes. Yep, Spotify indirect competitor. Nice. So let's move on to the next mindset of competitor analysis. One which is quite important, and it is to compare through criteria and not personal preference. Um, could anyone could anyone tell me why that might be important? All right. So, yep. Whitney.
Um, Comparing through criteria, it eliminates the bias that you would have if you were using it with personal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Exactly, exactly. Because if you are viewing, you know, let's say you were designing something for an elderly person and you were doing a competitor analysis and you were like, oh, I really like this, so I'm going to put this into the design. And then, chances are that person or the elderly person might not be able to see it in the same way that you do. Yep, exactly. It encourages bias, as Winnie said as well, different tastes and different preferences between you and your users of the product. Exactly. Nice. Um, and the next one is, don't copy for the sake of it. Do you, can anyone think of any examples of, you know, blindly imitating a certain product, or saying not examples but maybe can tell me why this is something that shouldn't be done? Mm-hmm. Poland, yeah.
Well, when you are addressing an issue, you are addressing an issue which is specific to some specific users. And so when you're developing a solution to that specific problem, it should target those specific, that specific group of people. And so when you copy from somewhere else, they were maybe developing a solution for their own problem after having done research for their own group. And so when you copy, you are solving a problem for the other group and not really the people that you are supposed to involve.
Exactly. Yeah, you might be designing for a completely different set of users. And so, maybe there was an app with information on climate change, and that information was all, very technical and scientific. And then if you're now designing something similar, but for a different group of users who maybe do not have as much of a scientific background, or maybe they are don't have as much English proficiency or something. If you're now just duplicating things that you've seen in another app for other users, there's a good chance that it might not work. Another. Mhm.
Can I give a scenario?
Yes, please.
Maybe we've seen shorts being used by so many applications like YouTube. We've seen reels on Instagram. Let's say maybe Netflix tries to come up with their own shorts. It won't work.
That's yeah. Those are everywhere. Um, do you have any reasons why it might not work on Netflix?
Because Netflix is kind of more of a longer version of movies. You wouldn't say you're just entertaining yourself while at work. You wouldn't say it's more of when you're entertaining yourself while relaxing, not just when you're passing time or in the car.
Yeah, and Netflix has been designed in a way that requires minimal like interactions and buttons. It's very easy for you to just click on something, and the shows just keep on playing and playing until that message comes up that's super judgmental. It's like, are you still watching this show? But yeah, that's a really great example. Like, you cannot just replicate reels on something like Netflix, and there's a reason that it's not there.
What if the reels could be used to do the trailers for movies, because they're usually short?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's great that there's some debate happening. But yeah, there's definitely potential in that, I guess. Yeah, if you were in that situation, what do you think you would need to do to know if that was a good idea or not?
I personally think it's actually there on Netflix mobile. If you have Netflix on your phone, it has the shorts and the reels for a few seconds of advertisement on your preference of movies or series to get you to watch more, or also to get you to watch something close to what you have been already watching. So I get why it's not on the TV, but it is there on the mobile phone.
Yeah, so again, like, it's used for very specific purposes and on certain devices, but not others. But again, there's always a reason behind it. And yeah, so I guess I still have this open question of, if you wanted to find out whether something is really working or not, does anyone have any thoughts of what you would need to do to find out? Poland?
Well, I will first look at the trends, maybe of the competitors. Have they implemented it before, and are the users happy with it, or are they leaving? And if they're leaving, then definitely there's a problem there. And so that you will know that it's not working. But if maybe the people are using the product more, then you will know that this can really work also for us if you similarly have the same problem.
Yeah. So looking at the trends, seeing what people are happy with, seeing what people are not happy with. And I've seen a question from Andrew: is the introduction to stories and social media applications an example of copying? Well, yes, technically, like, you are copying it, but a lot of things in UX are essentially copied. Like, if you look at websites, the navigation is usually like very similar. You have the menu at the top. Sometimes you have the hamburger menus. Again, if you have too much variation in UX, people will just get confused. But again, as you get deeper into UX research, the skill is sort of in the decision making and understanding why you're making particular decisions. So like we discussed with Netflix, like the reason that they may have these shorts on the mobile phone but not the TV, still it might be copied, but it's how they're using it, and even the decision to use them in the first place, and whether that increases the engagement of the users. Like, that's where the skill of the UX researcher or the designer will come in. And so, yes, you can definitely look at trends. But again, at the end of the day, there's really no substitute for usability testing. And I think this is something you will learn about more later in the course. And usability testing is when you put your product in the hands of the users, or you can even put a competitor's product in the hands of the users in their context, and actually seeing how they experience it. You might be looking at all of these competitors and thinking, oh, this is good, this fits that criteria, this works. But at the end of the day, until you get like real feedback, this this is something that you really need to pay attention to, and not just make assumptions. So those are the 5 important mindsets when you're looking at competitors. So just taking that with a pinch of salt. Yes, you can do all these things, but until like you have people providing feedback on this product in a real world scenario, there's always a chance that your product may not work if you're simply like taking from what is existing. Um, did someone unmute their mic? Anyone want to respond? All right, so I'm going to take you through some different approaches that you can take to a competitor analysis. Whether you're doing it internally just by yourself, or even if you're in a company doing it with your colleagues, or whether perhaps you might be a freelance UX consultant and you're doing it for a client, and whether that client is aware of UX or not. So this first one is actually one that my co-organizer and founder of UX Kitchen came up with, and I really like this because it's so simple. It gives you a nice direction, and you can also find this on an article that we have at UX Kitchen. So I'll make sure to send that along to the co-organizers to share. So for this particular one, it's recommended to have a sort of North Star. So if you are hoping to create a certain feeling in your product, this can be your North Star. So let's say you're creating a website for a startup, and you want it to be divergent and visionary. Now this is now sort of the foundation in which you look at all other websites, but now you can break it down into themes as well. So the themes in this particular competitor analysis was people, storytelling, research, and by breaking it down into themes, now you can look at other graphics based on these things. So by people, it could be, you know, the team section on certain websites. By storytelling, it's like, how is the company talking about their journey to get to where they are. And research, this could be, you know, either if it's a university website or like an R&D type of startup. And so the way it's been broken down is by theme on the going down, and then for the rows, you have competitor. So you name the competitors that you're looking at for that particular theme, and some positive nuggets, some not so positive nuggets. And with each competitor, so for example, you know, what you might want to look at the MIT's Media Lab website, because they are divergent and visionary. And so you'd look at, you know, some positive nuggets could be related to, you know, having intricate graphics. Some not so positive nuggets might be too much text, or, you know, you don't even see faces of the people. And this just gives you a simple way of breaking down like what's working well and what's not. Um, Now, if we want to get into a more systematic, you know, detailed scoring type of competitor analysis, you can go as far as to create your own criteria and rating system, where again you have like the theme or category on the left-hand side, and you define your criteria for what's poor, what's average, and what's excellent. So for a marketing commerce integration, for example, a poor one would be the option to buy now is not offered in the marketing pages and users are sent to another site. Whereas an excellent one would be that the sites are well integrated and this transition is very seamless to buy now. Once you've created the criteria, again, I wouldn't go through everything since this is just an example. You can now have your different competitors to company A, B, C, and then you can start scoring them based on that criteria that you've created under these themes, and then you can score them at the end. And the next one I'll show you is actually from a project I've been working on, where we are looking at um, thinking of how to improve the user experience of a website that's been designed for lower-end devices, for those who may have limited connectivity, you know, perhaps can't access the internet all the time because they can't afford it, but providing information on sexual and reproductive health, and HIV. And so these are screenshots from a particular report. And here we have, you know, just displaying the images, because now this is for a particular client. And so showing them the screenshots and explaining, you know, what is it about this page that's interesting. And again, this is not a rigorous analysis, but um, it's just to show some examples that can lead to inspiration for the improvement of that particular product. So, you know, for this one, they have interesting comics and storytelling. They have an FAQ page where, you know, they point to certain scenarios, like I want to have safe sex, I want to find a health facility to get tested. And they even have additional value offering of purchasing products at a pharmacy and offering that sense of privacy. And here's just another one of another competitor in quotes, because they're not exactly charging for these services, but, you know, showing how it has the navigation been organized. There's secondary menus where you can see categories about, you know, love and relationships, our bodies, birth control, etc. And then even, you know, articles with surprising content and languages that will draw the user to that attention. And so this is just a way of documenting it if you now are doing work for someone else to show what you've discovered. So I I've talked about all of these different approaches. I just want to ask if is that clear? Perhaps like which of these approaches, would you pick for your project and why? What did you like or not like about some of these different approaches? And there's no right answer. Any thoughts or any comments? Was that clear? Was it confusing?
I I got a little bit confused on the external part.
Mhm.
Could you please come back again? Just
Mhm.
brief.
Yeah. What was it about it that confused you? Was it just the fact that it's external or? So the external one was just a point I was trying to make about if you are doing a competitor analysis for a client for their product, and perhaps maybe the client, all they're going to see is this report that you've created for this analysis. So, the way in which you present information, it has to be very visual. You need to show what it is about that particular product that was interesting. Again, you could also go through these other more systematic approaches to actually score the usability of different products. But for this particular one, it was used more as a source of inspiration rather than actually doing a hardcore analysis of different products. Does that help, or does that help to make sense for you?
Yes.
Anyone else? Any thoughts on some of these different approaches?
Hi.
Hi.
I've loved the external. It's. I think I love the images. I think I love working with images just to see what I'm working against. So for me, that really has stood out. It's easy for me to know actually what what is working, and then go with the one where you actually rank from poor, average up to excellent, so that you know where you actually stand.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah, great. That's good to know. And yeah, it's always good to be aware of how you like to work, whether you like visuals, whether you're more okay with text or good with numbers. So again, there's no right way, especially if this is an informal activity. You can approach this in the way that is most comfortable to you. Great. So I will try to
Hi.
wrap. Oh yeah.
Question. When you say internal and external, does it mean that the internal one you're doing for a product you've set up for yourself and you're comparing it to others, and then external is maybe comparing two different products for maybe a client who will set up for you?
So yeah, that's a good question. So what I meant was, by internal, it meant that either you're doing it for yourself or you're in your own company, but that whatever document that you're creating is not going to be presented outside of this company or where you are. So whereas external is more like you're doing work for another company, but maybe you are creating a report, and that report is essentially your product that you're going to pass on to that company. So if you are doing something that's external, you have to be a lot more intentional about how you are communicating your work so that someone can understand what you've done without you having to be there to explain it. Whereas an internal one, if you have your internal product design team and they understand, like, maybe just like working through a rough document, like that's how you can work on your competitor analysis. It's more like just how do you present or how do you document your competitor analysis, whether it's internal or external.
Okay. Okay.
Cool. I'll go into the final part on competitor analysis, and this is just what are the limitations of a competitor analysis. We may have mentioned some before. I'll just quickly run through this, and then we can go into the next activity. So um, while a competitor analysis can help you understand what's out there, it may not help you to come up with new ideas or to innovate because all you're seeing is what's existing. But there could be another feature or another like design component that you could introduce that no one has done in the industry before that could, potentially have a huge impact on the users in a positive way. So while it can show you what's out there, maybe not what's possible. It can the insights that you get from doing this competitor analysis, it really depends on who is the person doing the analysis. So if you're very new to UX, you haven't you know done as much research on like why particular features are used as opposed to others or other components. For example, why do you use page numbers versus infinite scrolling? This might constrain your ability to really critically evaluate a particular product. But again, you can always read. There's tons of resources out there where you can look for certain design decisions and why they're used in popular products. The other thing is that they can also be time consuming, and so again, if you are documenting this competitor analysis, you really need to think about what is it that you want to get out of it. And if it's just some quick learnings, maybe just writing some bullet points on an Excel sheet is enough, or a Word document. Whereas if you want to do a really extensive one and like get some really deep insights, you might need to take some more time. So it's really up to you, the project you're on, and what you want to get out of it. So that's it for competitor analysis. Before I move on to the generation of ideas, which is going to be an interactive activity, are there any questions? No, I hope, okay, who here feels like they've learned something new about competitor analysis? You can give a thumbs up or type in the chat. Great. Collins, nice. Nice. I've seen a few hands up, so I hope this was valuable for you. And now I'll go into generating ideas. So how many of you have done a brainstorming session before? If you have, no worries. If you haven't, sorry, if you haven't, no worries. Okay, Collins, you've done one. Collins, could you tell us about your experience doing some brainstorming?
Okay, so my experience when you're doing brainstorming is usually there's a lot of thinking that goes around it. So most of the time, you usually don't have the idea with you, unless maybe let's say you have a team of maybe 5 people, and then maybe someone shoots an idea, and then maybe you get your own ideas as well from maybe someone else's thought process. So it's always a journey of mostly thinking and then just shooting up ideas and then writing them down so that you can be able to work from there.
Nice. I've seen another hand up. Kisiangani.
When I want to generate ideas through brainstorming, what I do is I just I make a mind map. I scribble down all the thoughts that come as I think about what I'm trying to solve. No matter how they might seem like they're really good ideas or not, I scribble all of them, and then when I think like I've exhausted, then I can start to narrow down to the ones which I think they are really effective. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Yeah. So you've done some individual brainstorming, some mind mapping, and then narrowing down. Where Collins has done it in a group setting. So yeah, interesting. I've seen. Yeah, a question: is brainstorming similar to a design sprint? So a brainstorming is a component of a design sprint. Usually, if you've done the AJ and Smart design sprint, it would come into, I think, the day 2 of the process, but it's definitely a really important part of it. And yeah, as Rose mentioned, you post a problem statement and ask for inputs, which is exactly what I'm going to do now. So I have a few potential problem statements in the form of how might we statements. And I'd like us to maybe vote on a few different ones. So firstly, I'll give you all access to this mural board. I hope that this will be fairly easy to use, but all you have to do is click on the link, no sign in required. It can be anonymous, so you don't have to add in your name. Or you can add in an anonymous a name. So I'll just wait for a few of you to come in. Let me know if you're having any challenges getting onto the board. Nice seeing a few people coming in. For those of you, if you're having any issues jumping in, you can always just type in your answers on the chat. So don't worry about it. But again, this might be nice if you haven't used Mural before and you like how this works. You can always introduce this to wherever you're working as a way to do brainstorming, because I find that it's quite helpful. Cool. I think I'm seeing about 7 people. Just gonna wait a little bit more for a few more people to join the board. Yeah, Rose, this is very similar to Miro. It's another whiteboarding software. So this is a direct competitor of Miro. Okay, I'm seeing about 10 people on the board. So I have a few different options for doing a brainstorm together, all of us. One of them is how might we create a sense of trust in a banking app? Another one, how might we reduce frustration on the government portal? Because oftentimes, maybe things don't work as well as you'd want them to. Things are not as smooth. How might we make a social media platform accessible to someone maybe who's illiterate? How might we redesign a delivery app for an elderly person? How might we create a sense of, and again, how might we create a sense of trust, but this time in a ride-hailing app? Maybe something like Uber or Bolt. Seeing a few more people join the board. So I want to ask, since not everyone is on the board, Does anyone have any strong preferences on which they would like to do a brainstorm on? Maybe just type in the one that you like on the chat. And then after the first, 5 or 6 responses, whichever one is the most popular, we can go with that. Anyone got some preferences? Whitney's the banking app. Ooh. Anyone else? Okay, Bros, government sites. Collins, banking app. Okay, Grace, banking app. Okay, so since we've got three we've got 3 banking apps, 2 for the government portal. I think let's go for the banking app question. And now, when you are doing a brainstorm, this is the question that we're all going to think of ideas from, but there are a few key rules for brainstorming that I want to emphasize. I hope I'm still sharing my screen. Okay. Can you see screen?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. Great. Let me know if it goes off at any point. I hope it didn't come off earlier when I was showing some of the other parts of the presentation. So a few key points in this stage of a brainstorming when it's very early stages. Defer judgment. So there's no idea that's a bad idea. Go for volume. So this time it's quantity over quality. Build on the ideas of others. So as you're seeing some people type and post on this board, then this might spark new ideas for you. Stay on topic. So again, keep in mind that this is going to be about a banking app. Encourage wild ideas. So this is your time to just go crazy and say anything, even no matter how ridiculous it might seem to be on an app. Just think of things that are bold and out there, and be visual. So this may not be possible now, but visual is, if you're doing it on physical post-it notes, you could sketch it out or doodle it. And we'll try to do this for the next 5 to 10 minutes. So for those of you who haven't used Mural before, how you can type in a post-it, you can double click and a post-it will appear. And then you can just type directly inside it. I'll also just create a few post-it notes around so you can just click on them to type in. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a timer for about 5 minutes, and you're going to think about this question. Think about the last bank app that you've used, whichever bank that you're registered on, and think of what you can start thinking of what you would do to improve that experience, and then you can start going even further and more out there and thinking of things that are a bit crazier. So let's give it. I'll put the timer for 5 minutes for now.
How do I get to participate?
So you can either just type your ideas on the chat, or you can join the mural board. Let me post it again. I'm posting the link again. So you just have to join the board, and once you're on it, all you have to do is double click to add a note, and you can start typing. Let me know if you're having any issues.
The link is not working for me.
Okay, let me try and send another one. Okay, it seems like, okay, maybe you can both try the last link that I've sent. If it's not working, you can just type your answers into the chat, and or you can either send it to me in a direct message if you want it to be anonymous, and I can just post it on the board. Yes, so the question is, how might we create a sense of trust in a banking app? I'll put it back up here in bold. So those of you are adding your ideas, I'll just post them onto the board. Yep, I've seen another potential question from Florence. How might we make the navigational experience exciting and engaging? Yeah, that's an interesting question. That would be another good one to do a brainstorm on as well. It's nice. It's nice to see a lot of ideas coming in. And yeah, as you're going through the board, look through what other people are saying. Does that inspire you to think of new ideas as well? So for those of you who can't access Mural, I'll just move around the board so you can read what a few others have said. All right, so time is up, but I'll let you, those of you finish if you're in the middle of writing an idea. So I'll give it just a few more seconds, maybe 30 seconds. Cool. All right. If you are writing one, just wrap up and we can move on to the next stage. Okay, so what I'm going to do is all of these Post-it notes, I'm just going to duplicate them and move them into the next section here. And usually this phase, again, you might be seeing 20 minutes, but we wouldn't take that much time. What this next phase is now to group similar ideas from the brainstorm. So usually when you have a group, you'll then give it like a category or a name. And if a group is much bigger, then try to see if you can break it up a little bit. So I'll just go and read through a few ideas that have come up. And then I'll ask you to think of, what are potential categories or groups that we could make out of them from similar ideas. So we've got the use of fingerprint locking, an OTP message, but that shouldn't take a long time, a big enough keypad to type in your passwords, a transaction email, but that's hidden with a password, OTP to be automatically detected, two-factor authentication, making sure users understand why sensitive information is needed, providing regular statements, having a live chat option for customer care, only being able to access it using the mobile network and operator and not through Wi-Fi, have an OTP notification every time the account is accessed, introducing an account confirmation prompt when making a transaction, being able to see the account details and the name of the transfers. So these are just a few. Another, improve on customer care support. So is anyone here seeing any themes coming out from what is on the board and some of the ones that I've read out? Mm-hmm. So Ivy, you mentioned customer support. Yeah. So we have this one, improved care on customer support. What was the other one that you noticed? Um, Yep, the chat feature, James, exactly. So that was also customer support. So on the board, again, it doesn't matter how you do this, but you could just group them together, perhaps move them somewhere here and write improved customer support. Yep, sign in options. Yep, exactly. So let's see. By sign-in options, do you mean like two-factor authentication? So I know there was a fingerprint one. Yep, 2FA. Yep. So there's quite a few on this, right? So there's when logging in. So again, yeah, this is we don't have to do this for every single thing, but this is just a way to illustrate how you can brainstorm multiple ideas and then now start narrowing down into certain categories. Before I move on to the next stage, are there any questions or about how to go through this part of the process? All right. Just add a few more. Okay, so we've thought of two categories. There's obviously more, maybe some around the statements. Again, yeah, I've seen one on security. That's a very good categories, like very broad. So that you can still have a few more within it. There's signing in, there's debt repayment scheduling, having a success page after a successful transaction. So transactions could be another theme as well. And now, once you've grouped ideas and you have so many, but the chances are you can't do everything that you want, given the resources and time and the budget that you have. So we then go through a process of prioritization. And again, with prioritization, there can be many different ways in which you might decide to prioritize a particular idea. Does anyone have thoughts about how they might go about prioritizing their ideas? If you were looking at this and you were the product manager at ABSA, how would you decide which of these ideas to go ahead with?
You look at the one that has so many concerns.
Yeah. So yeah, the one that's been causing a lot of maybe frustration with the users. Anyone else?
We may also look at the one that has been mostly mentioned.
Sorry?
We may also look at the one that has been maybe mostly mentioned by the people participating on the brainstorm.
So if if we've got a ton of responses on two-factor authentication and maybe that's not incorporated into the product yet, then that's a signal that this is something that everyone has on their mind that should be in the product. So yeah. Poland?
Also, you can consider one which has a high risk. For example, if you look at the sign-in options verification and you look at the customer support, well, the customer support can wait, but then verification and logging in using the emails, if that is at risk, then you'll have to look at it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like if you don't have enough verification steps on your product, then you might be causing problems with your users, and that's the reason why they maybe are going to customer support and customer support is overloaded. So if you fix that first issue, then that might already relieve some of the pressure of customer support. Again, yeah, it might be less priority to focus on that. Yep. So looking at the potential implications and consequences, I'll wait for one more answer. I know someone else has their hand up. Paminus.
I'd say you may choose the one that is most likely to have a higher impact on your problem statements. let's say it's most likely to have better results.
Yeah. So you have to, judge and decide, or evaluate like which of these ideas has the potential for the highest impact. Yeah, nice. So as I mentioned, there's so many ways of doing this. There's no one right way. Each product team might have their own way of prioritizing. But the one that I'll show you is the scale of importance and feasibility. So again, importance, like you mentioned, Minas, it could be impact, or it could be related to the potential implications that was also mentioned. So if the potential implications are super high risk, the chances are that it might be an important feature to add. And then on the other side is feasibility, low and high. So what feasibility means is like, how easy is it to implement this feature? If it's just a simple thing that just needs to be there, it will just take a developer like a day to code up, then the chances are it would go on the higher feasibility side. And so you then group these, you'd put these ideas that you've grouped, maybe like get rid of the duplicates, and then you would find out where on the scale, together with your product team, this can fit. So let's take a look. How about this chat option, the chatbot with customer care? Do we think that where would we place this on the scale of importance and feasibility, and why?
I'd say it's very important, but the feasibility might be low since it may take time to code.
Nice. I said, was it Paminas? You also had a thought? Or love it?
When it comes to customer care, I think it's something that would be easy to work with compared to the logging in data, because it's data sensitive. So I think when it comes to verification and security of data, it would take more time to deal with it. But when it comes to customer care, it's something that can be done easily, maybe even in a day.
And I guess that would depend on what you want to change with customer care, right? Like if it is building a high-tech, maybe chatbot that's powered by AI, perhaps that might be on the more difficult end. Whereas if there's smaller things, just enabling customers to connect with customer care more easily, that might be something on the more feasible side. But yeah, things that are data sensitive would probably require a lot of time. So the feasibility would maybe be low for these. And probably lower than the customer care interventions. Any other thoughts? How about this one? Making users understand why sensitive information is needed. Where do you think that would fall on our matrix?
I think it would be of higher feasibility because it's something that can be done via customer care. So, yeah.
Cool. And how about importance? Roland?
Well, according to me, it can be easily done by simply speaking to the user on the other end. I will take the example of this time when Safaricom was requiring us to re-register the line again. And I did not understand really why we were supposed to again submit our names and just some sensitive information. So I think that that will be also of importance, because if only Safaricom had made the users understand why the information was needed again, then maybe they will go apply with ease.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, something that's pretty simple to do, and you have some personal experience, with Safaricom. So yeah, it's something that can be easily done, so very feasible, and probably on the more important side, I'm guessing from your explanation. Any other thoughts from what we've shown? All right. Well, I think what I want to show is that, again, this depending on who is in your team, like, it's important to have a representative group on your product team. Someone in data, someone in design, someone in development, because you, as the user experience design, may not necessarily know how difficult something might be to implement, and so it's good to have others in the team, and then you can go through these debates. I know that we've seen some different thoughts and opinions coming about how important and how feasible things are. So again, there's no it's difficult to find an objective um, answer to whether, like, how far on these scales that something should be, but working with other people and in a group always helps, and once you arrive at a consensus, then you can start prioritizing. Generally, the ones that fall into this area here, those that are high importance and highly feasible, those are usually action points that should be prioritized first, because they will be easy to implement but also have an high impact. And then you can start moving further down. Generally, if something is difficult and not important, there's no point even considering it. But this entire exercise was just to illustrate how you can go from many ideas. What are some of the key mindsets of brainstorming in the beginning, and how you can then start narrowing down and prioritizing on some of the ideas to implement. So that's it for brainstorming, and that's also it for the rest of my presentation. Um, I guess it took about an hour and a half, so not too bad. Does anyone have any questions, any comments, anything, any takeaways from the session, or I hope it's been valuable for you, and yeah, I'll just leave it open to anyone who has anything to say, and if not, I'll hand it back to Luke.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
In regard to when you're checking out the competition in terms of building your product for your user, and let's say you're offering, like, when it's back to having something similar, but the company is different. What if you build something what if your product has, like, identical services to your competitor? Are you liable for copyright?
You mean, like, are there any legal implications?
Yeah, there are legal implications if you build a similar product to your competitor, like everything.
Maybe if things are, like, exactly the same, maybe you're using the same color, the same branding, everything. If it's like a very obviously like a copy of something else, there could potentially be legal implications. Again, I'm not so familiar with IP law in Kenya, but at the same time, there are also so many businesses that are doing the same thing, e-commerce businesses, or you have ride-hailing apps like Uber, Bolt. They're essentially doing very similar things, but I think you do still have to find within what you're doing, even if it's similar and you can do it, you need to find what is making you different or what's giving you that competitive edge. Again, lots of e-commerce sites look very similar, but they're not exactly the same. There's always something slightly different. Sorry, I don't know if I've answered that question very well, but I hope.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Great. Great, and I'm seeing the chat. I'm glad some of you have found this to be a good session. Any other questions? And also thank you so much for all your participation. It's been great. Colin?
So how exactly do you get to choose which idea to implement? Is it the time when it's all high, when it's all important, and also when it's important, and also it's also easily feasible, or maybe when it's important but it's not easily feasible? No, exactly how do you get to choose it?
So generally, if something is very important and very feasible, those are what I'd call quick wins. Like you just it's easy to implement, and so probably those are the ones you put at the top of your to-do list because you can get them done quickly and they'll have a big impact on your users. But if other things are still important and like was mentioned, if they could have high implications on users, like maybe very important and it would be very difficult to do, it's still something that needs to be put into a work plan to be addressed. Yep, Poland. Is your hand still up or from the previous question, or is that a response?
Well understood.
Okay, cool. Joseph?
Yeah, so I don't know if maybe you had answered this one. So maybe after brainstorming and we are now prioritizing on the importance and the feasibility on each of the brainstorm. Is it like each individual we kind of like do it, or like maybe let's say the project manager who will be kind of like doing that specific session?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, how do you actually go about this prioritization? And honestly, I think it works differently in every startup and company and organization and the way that they prioritize. So, some companies may not even have a a full-on product team. You may be like the only UX designer. You may be in a company that's full of UX designers and you need to get everyone's input in. Or you might have a project manager or a product manager who's calling the shots and is just deciding based on the information that you've given them. So it really depends on the culture of the company, the systems they have in place, and the processes that they're used to going through, how you do it. But again, it's always good to have your voice as the UX designer and advocate for, you are probably the one in the company who will understand your customers the most and what their needs are, and so you will be the advocate to push to the rest of your team to say why certain ideas maybe should be prioritized over others. Kisiangani, seeing your hand.
While you are looking at data analysis,
Mm-hmm.
you say that we should not do copy pasting like directly.
Mm-hmm.
So my concern is how do you come up with something new and it doesn't seem like it's odd to the users? Like how do you balance coming up with a new idea
Yeah.
and avoiding confusion with the users, like it should seem familiar to them?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. How do you find that balance between using what's existing and coming up with something new? And for the example I can think of is, let's say you're designing an e-commerce site. You're probably all used to using Jumia and Amazon, Sky Garden. Generally, they all have a very similar structure in the way you can browse products. And so, if you designed a completely different one in which the way you navigate through products is very different, that probably will cause a lot of confusion to the users. So it's up to you to make the judgment of like, what are the things that you will keep consistent with maybe your competitors, and what are some little additions or new things that you can add without disrupting the overall experience, but maybe adding a sense of delight or appeal to the users a little bit more. So it really will be on your own judgment. But again, as I mentioned, as part of these mindsets, like testing is always the way to really know whether your ideas are working. And you can do this in low cost, low fidelity ways. I think there are going to be sessions that are fully on this, because they deserve a lot of time to get through. But these are probably the best ways in which you can really tell whether your idea that's maybe is trying to push the boundaries is worth it or not. Cool. Any last questions? Great. Thank you. Thanks all for the comments. I'm glad that this has been practical and informative. Cool. So I think I'll pass it back to Luke. Thank you all again for the amazing participation. It's so nice to have a group of participants who are so willing to engage and contribute to the discussions. So I hope you learned not just from this presentation, but from others in this call as well. Thank you so much. Luke, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Rajay. The session was amazing. Yeah, so I've shared in the chat the people you can tag as you tweet. You can tag MS Ambassadors, KE, UX Kitchen, KE, and also our speaker, Rajay Shah. Yep. So make sure you tweet what you've been learning. Yes, and so thank you for joining today's session. Just a reminder of the session that we'll be having on Saturday. Saturday, we'll be having a live mock interview on UI and UX from 5 to 7 p.m. East African time. So make sure you attend. It will be an amazing session. Yes, so we'll be sharing the details in the Slack. So make sure you've shared with your friends, your family, anyone who is interested in UX and UI. Yes, thank you. So unless there's someone with a question, I think we can close at that. Yes, have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.